Isaac Hayes, a respected Black entrepreneur and the visionary behind a string of exclusive retail boutiques, strolled along Kensington Avenue, dressed inconspicuously in jeans, a simple jacket, and a dark cap. This was a rare day for Isaac, an opportunity to visit one of his prized luxury stores incognito, without the weight of status or expectation. Known for his grounded approach to business, Isaac had always believed in creating a welcoming environment for his clients, regardless of their background or appearance. His chain of stores, branded under Elegantia, was celebrated for merging sophistication with comfort. Each branch reflected Isaac's meticulous eye for detail, from the marble floors to the elegant crystal chandeliers that adorned the ceiling. Isaac took pride in knowing his stores could offer luxury without pretense. But today, as he approached one of his most successful locations, he was intent on confirming whether the values he cherished were being honored in his absence. With a subtle breath, he stepped into the Kensington Elegantia branch, immediately noticing the familiar scent of fine leather, the soft glow of chandeliers, and the echo of subtle jazz in the air. He looked around at the sleek displays, gleaming cases, and thoughtfully arranged sections of high-end items he'd personally curated. Dressed as he was, Isaac blended into the crowd. It was intentional. He wanted to witness how customers were treated when they appeared ordinary. As Isaac wandered to the watch display near the entrance, he marveled at the intricate craftsmanship of each timepiece. He lingered over a model he'd chosen months ago, a stunning silver piece with a sapphire face that gleamed under the light. Just as he admired the delicate handiwork, Isaac felt a shadow cast nearby. "Can I help you with something?" A clipped voice broke through the ambient music. Isaac turned to see Edward Graham, the franchise owner of this location. Edward, a man in his mid-50s, wore a meticulously tailored suit, though his expression carried a subtle hint of condescension. Isaac could tell by the way Edward looked him up and down that he saw only an average customer, not a man of means or stature. "Yes, actually," Isaac replied, keeping his tone light. "I was hoping to learn more about this watch." Edward's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, a guarded smile forming on his lips as if he were humoring a child. Yes, that's one of our premier items. Limited edition." His voice had a dismissive undertone, an implication that someone like Isaac might not truly appreciate such an exclusive piece. "Perhaps you might be more comfortable with something a little more affordable?" The thinly veiled slight hit Isaac, though he kept his composure. He was used to people making assumptions based on appearance, but to witness it in his own store stirred something deeper. "And what makes this piece special?" he asked, probing further. Edward sighed, seeming slightly annoyed. "It's handcrafted by an elite Swiss watchmaker. Each part is precision engineered, and only a few of these exist worldwide. But it's priced at $98,000, he emphasized, as if to drive the point home that this watch wasn't meant for just anyone. "We do, however, have other models that are, shall we say, more accessible." Isaac raised an eyebrow, not missing the subtle message behind Edward's words. He knew Edward hadn't recognized him, but the blatant presumption that he couldn't afford the watch simply because he didn't look the part stung. "I see," Isaac replied coolly, his voice steady but masking the irritation beneath. He placed the watch back with care, still aware of Edward's evaluating stare. Turning, Isaac decided to move further into the store, stopping next by a selection of designer coats. As he reached for an elegant, woolen overcoat, Edward appeared again, seemingly unable to resist the urge to monitor Isaac's every move. The coat was exactly the kind of piece Isaac loved, refined, functional, and effortlessly stylish. He held it up, inspecting the fine stitching and dark, rich fabric. "How much is this coat?" he asked, glancing at Edward. Edward's lips tightened. "That one is $2,000. It's from our latest Italian collection." He paused, then added pointedly, "We don't usually put such high-end items within easy reach. We reserve them for clients who understand their true value." Isaac let the words sink in. The insinuation was unmistakable. Edward didn't think he belonged here. Every word felt like a door closing, a silent judgment that someone like him didn't have a place among the polished displays and luxury merchandise. Despite the rising frustration, Isaac maintained his composure. "I appreciate quality," he said, his voice calm yet firm. And I might be interested in this coat. Edward seemed slightly taken aback, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. He leaned in, his tone lowering with a hint of condescension. Look, he began, as if sharing a hard truth, we cater to a particular clientele here. If you're seriously interested, we'll need proof of payment first. These aren't items just anyone can try on. Isaac felt the familiar weight of his temper building. He'd come into his own store looking to ensure his customers were treated with respect, regardless of who they were or how they looked. Now, the message Edward was sending was clear. Exclusivity, in this man's eyes, meant keeping out those who didn't fit the brand. Interesting policy, Isaac replied, letting Edward's gaze meet his own for a moment, searching for any sign of doubt or self-awareness. But Edward's expression remained resolute, his arms crossing over his chest in a stance of authority. Isaac Hayes lingered near the back of the store, deliberately moving from one high-end display to another. The store's refined ambience, with its marble floors and dimly lit showcases, masked a quiet tension he couldn't ignore. Edward Graham's watchful presence followed him from a distance, as if assessing each move Isaac made. Isaac could feel Edward's gaze, a mix of skepticism and impatience, practically piercing through him. Isaac strolled toward the section displaying rare handbags, pieces he'd personally sourced from exclusive designers known for their limited edition creations. He carefully picked up a deep olive leather bag, admiring the craftsmanship and intricate detailing. Just then, Edward materialized beside him, arms folded, his expression tense. "Ah, those are from a very specialized line," Edward said, his tone laced with subtle disapproval. He glanced at Isaac's casual attire before adding, "Perhaps you'd like to see some of our more accessible options. We have quite a variety that might better suit your needs." Isaac met Edward's gaze, unflinching, his face betraying no emotion. "Actually, I'm interested in these high-end pieces," he replied calmly, his fingers tracing the smooth leather of the bag. "This one in particular caught my eye. Could you tell me more about it?" Edward's face tightened, as if he were dealing with a minor inconvenience. "Certainly," he responded, voice measured. "This is part of an exclusive line, handcrafted in Italy. Only a handful were made, and it's priced accordingly." His tone became quieter, as if he were confiding a secret. "It retails for $14,500. Just so you know, we have other bags with more, let's say, approachable price points." Isaac felt the weight of the remark settle over him. Edward's dismissal was clear. He believed Isaac didn't belong among the clientele capable of purchasing such items. Isaac's patience thinned, but he forced himself to remain composed, maintaining an air of polite interest. "I understand, but I'd like to hear more about the process behind this line," he pressed, his voice calm and direct. Edward's sigh was barely audible, but it was enough for Isaac to catch. He launched into a rote description, his voice devoid of passion or genuine interest. He listed off details mechanically, where the leather was sourced, how the stitching was crafted, all while maintaining a tone that implied he didn't expect Isaac to make a serious purchase. After Edward finished his lackluster explanation, Isaac placed the bag back down carefully, glancing at the man beside him. "Thank you," he said, his tone even. "I appreciate the information." Edward nodded curtly, eager to move on, but Isaac had no intention of leaving just yet. He moved toward a display of designer shoes, a collection known for its exclusivity and striking designs. He reached for a pair of shoes with sleek black leather and an understated yet sophisticated buckle, a model he had specifically selected for the Elegantia line due to its elegance and fine craftsmanship. Before he could even fully inspect the shoes, Edward appeared again. "Those are a very premium item," he said, voice lowered as if discussing a private matter. "They're quite expensive, you know. We do have other models in our back section that might be a better fit." The implication was clear, and Isaac's restraint was being tested with every passing second. He took a steady breath, forcing his irritation to remain beneath the surface. "I'm aware," he replied, a hint of steel now creeping into his tone. "I'd still like to know about these shoes, if you don't mind." Edward's expression shifted to barely masked irritation. He hesitated before launching into a brief, almost reluctant description of the shoe's origins, throwing in terms like handcrafted and imported materials with the same detached air as before. When he finished, he added, almost as an afterthought, "These go for around $3,200. Isaac nodded, letting the silence hang between them for a moment. He didn't need to challenge Edward outright. He could feel the assumptions under every word, every glance, every begrudging description. Edward wasn't treating him like a valued customer. He was treating him as a nuisance. Maintaining his composure, Isaac shifted to the jewelry display, drawn to a necklace of intricately set sapphires and diamonds. The piece gleamed under the lights, its polished surfaces catching Isaac's eye immediately. Before he could even ask, Edward was by his side again, his dismissive expression now entirely unmasked. "That's a collector's piece," Edward stated, his voice flat. "One of our most exclusive items, not something we usually show just anyone." The words stung with a sharp, blatant disrespect. Isaac turned to Edward, eyes narrowing slightly. "I would still like to know about it," he said, his voice firm. "Please." Edward's hesitation was clear, but he seemed unwilling to break the facade he had chosen. With another sigh, he launched into a minimal explanation, his tone practically dripping with reluctance. "It's set with high-grade sapphires, each one cut specifically for this piece. Made to order. It's priced at $25,000, he concluded, his voice sharp, as if the amount would be enough to dissuade Isaac's interest. Isaac held the necklace in his hands, feeling its weight, the coldness of the metal and stones in stark contrast to the warmth of his rising anger. He placed the piece back with careful precision, every movement deliberate. He then turned to Edward, looking him directly in the eye. "I appreciate your assistance today," he said, his voice steady. "It's been illuminating." Edward nodded, offering a tight smile that barely reached his eyes. "Of course," he replied, seemingly eager for Isaac to move on and allow him to attend to more deserving customers. With a final glance at Edward, Isaac walked toward the exit, the gleaming storefront fading behind him as he stepped back into the cool evening air. The encounter had left a bitter taste, but it also fueled his determination. What he'd experienced went beyond mere assumptions. It was a blatant disregard for the values he had built his brand upon. The place he had intended as a beacon of luxury and respect had been tarnished by small-minded bias. As he walked down Kensington Avenue, his resolve solidified. Isaac now saw the problem clearly, and he had no intention of ignoring it. Tomorrow, he would return, but not as Isaac Hayes, the unrecognized shopper. This time, he would make sure Edward and everyone else understood who he was and what he stood for. The next day, Isaac Hayes returned to Elegantia's Kensington branch, once again dressed inconspicuously in dark jeans, a plain jacket, and the same nondescript cap. He felt a renewed sense of purpose as he approached the glass doors. He had seen enough the day before to recognize the issue, but today he was here to uncover the depth of the problem. He needed to know if Edward's behavior was an isolated case or a pattern deeply rooted in his store's operations. As he stepped inside, the familiar chime echoed through the air. The polished floors and soft lighting were just as he remembered, but today, the allure of luxury felt tainted. Isaac's eyes scanned the store, noting the employees, their stances, and the way they greeted customers. He took his time, moving slowly and listening carefully, observing the dynamics with a critical eye. Near the front, he noticed a young black couple browsing the handbag section, their fingers grazing over the polished leather bags. Just moments after they picked up a high-end piece, Edward appeared, his expression instantly shifting to one of thinly veiled scrutiny. Isaac positioned himself nearby, pretending to examine a display, keenly aware of Edward's approach to the couple. "May I help you with something?" Edward asked, his tone overly polite, but with an edge that suggested otherwise. The couple exchanged a glance, clearly sensing his guarded demeanor. "Yes, actually," the man replied, maintaining a polite tone. "We were admiring this bag. It's stunning." Edward's smile tightened, his eyes darting between them and the bag. "That's a very exclusive item," he replied. "Limited edition. Perhaps you'd be interested in some of our more accessible pieces," he added, gesturing vaguely toward a nearby display with lower-priced options. His tone held the same condescending undertone Isaac had encountered the day before. The couple's faces fell, the man's hand dropping away from the bag as he glanced at his partner. Isaac could see the disappointment in their eyes, mixed with a hint of resignation. They exchanged a look, and without another word, moved toward the other section Edward had suggested. Edward watched them go, a faint look of satisfaction flickering across his face. Isaac clenched his jaw, his frustration building. It wasn't just about him. Edward's dismissive attitude extended to anyone who didn't look like they belonged. Isaac felt the sting of it, a painful reminder of the silent barriers that still existed even in spaces he had built. Deciding to move deeper into the store, Isaac walked over to a display of limited edition shoes. He noticed a young sales associate nearby, nervously clutching a tablet, her eyes darting between the customers and Edward. As she turned, Isaac heard Edward call her name sharply, and she immediately straightened, stepping over to him with a tense expression. "Sarah," Edward said in a low, authoritative voice, "we need to be vigilant. There's a certain image we need to uphold here. Make sure you're watching closely, especially anyone who might not fit our usual clientele." Sarah's face tensed, and she looked visibly uncomfortable, her eyes flickering over to Isaac briefly before she looked away. "Of course, Mr. Graham," she replied softly, her discomfort barely masked. Isaac could see the conflict in her eyes, the way she hesitated, clearly torn between following orders and her own instincts. Edward's gaze followed her line of sight to Isaac, and Isaac quickly looked away, pretending to inspect a nearby watch display. He could feel Edward's scrutiny intensify, his presence looming even from a distance. Isaac watched as Edward's attention returned to Sarah, his tone dropping to a barely audible murmur. "Remember, we have a certain clientele to cater to," Edward continued, his voice dripping with implication. "If they don't look like they belong, it's best to keep things minimal." Sarah gave a tense nod, her lips pressed together in a tight line. Isaac felt a pang of sympathy for her. She was clearly caught between the fear of losing her job and the discomfort of enforcing a policy she likely didn't agree with. Isaac knew then that Edward's behavior was not just personal bias. He had made it a part of the store's operations, ingraining his prejudices into the very fabric of the environment. Isaac's heart sank as he continued observing the store. Each interaction felt tainted, each staff member seeming to operate under Edward's unspoken rule of who deserved service and who did not. As he moved toward the jewelry section, he noticed another customer, a middle-aged Latino man, dressed in a casual polo and jeans, examining a bracelet. Just as he reached for the piece, Edward was there, his stance subtly defensive. "That's part of a very exclusive collection," Edward said, his voice steely. "We usually reserve it for certain clients, those with a deep appreciation for its value." The man looked up, taken aback. "Oh, I understand," he said, his voice trailing off. He placed the bracelet back, his enthusiasm clearly dampened, and moved away, avoiding Edward's gaze. Isaac watched as Edward's eyes followed him, a faint look of satisfaction on his face. It was now undeniable. Edward's condescension and discriminatory behavior were not isolated incidents but a daily pattern that touched every interaction in the store. The experience left Isaac feeling a mixture of disappointment and anger. He had built Elegantia to be a sanctuary of luxury, a place where all people could feel valued. Yet here, the vision he'd poured his heart into was being tarnished by a man who viewed the brand's identity through a narrow, prejudiced lens. Isaac knew he couldn't let this continue. This wasn't just a matter of adjusting policies or retraining staff. It was about setting a standard of respect and equality, starting from the top. He glanced around the store, watching the customers, each with their own story, their own right to be there. He thought of the young couple, the Latino man, Sarah's discomfort, and every other person who had walked through the doors with hope and been met with judgment. As Isaac left the store that day, his steps were heavy but resolute. He now knew the full extent of the issue, and the responsibility weighed on him. But his resolve had never been stronger. Tomorrow, he would come back as Isaac Hayes, the owner. And he would make it clear that Elegantia was not just a store, but a place where everyone, regardless of appearance or background, was welcomed and respected. This would be the beginning of a change, a transformation that would redefine the very soul of his brand. Isaac Hayes sat at the head of a long, polished table in the Elegantia headquarters conference room. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a stark light over the spacious room. Today, this setting felt more like an arena, a place where hard truths would be laid bare. The day before, Isaac had called Edward Graham to the headquarters for a performance review. Isaac knew Edward wouldn't suspect anything unusual. He was likely expecting a casual update on sales or a discussion about upcoming collections. But Isaac had something entirely different in mind. Moments later, Edward entered, dressed in his usual tailored suit, an air of confidence surrounding him. However, as his eyes landed on Isaac at the head of the table, his assured expression wavered. Confusion flickered across his face, followed quickly by surprise as he realized that the man he'd dismissed the day before was, in fact, Isaac Hayes, the owner of Elegantia. "Mr. Hayes, I didn't expect you," Edward stammered, trying to compose himself. "I thought this was just a routine review." "Take a seat, Edward," Isaac said, his tone calm but firm. Edward hesitated for a split second before taking the chair directly across from Isaac. He attempted a smile, but it was tight, forced. Isaac watched him carefully, giving Edward a moment to settle before beginning. "As you know, I visited the Kensington store recently," Isaac began, his voice measured. "I wanted to experience the store as any other customer might, without the influence of my position. I was curious to see how we're treating our clients." Edward's face grew pale, but he maintained a mask of professionalism, nodding as though he were merely following along. "Of course, Mr. Hayes. I hope everything was to your satisfaction." Isaac held Edward's gaze, his expression unreadable. "No, Edward. It was not to my satisfaction." The room fell silent, and Isaac could see a flicker of panic cross Edward's eyes. Isaac continued, his voice low and steady. "What I witnessed yesterday went against everything I've built this brand to represent. You dismissed me based on my appearance, Edward. You assumed I didn't belong there, and I wasn't the only one." Edward shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers tapping against the armrest. I didn't realize it was you, Mr. Hayes. If I had known." "That's precisely the issue, Edward," Isaac interrupted, his tone sharp. "It shouldn't matter who I am. Every customer who walks through those doors should be treated with respect, without exception. But you judged me, as well as others, solely on appearance." Edward's face flushed, and he scrambled for a response, his voice taking on a pleading tone. "Mr. Hayes, please, you have to understand. I was trying to uphold the brand's image. Elegantia is about exclusivity, sophistication. We have a certain clientele, and it's my job to protect the store's reputation." Isaac leaned back, his gaze steady. "You think that refusing service or suggesting more affordable options to certain customers is protecting the brand? That's not exclusivity, Edward. That's prejudice. And it's completely unacceptable." Edward's confidence cracked further, his expression becoming one of desperation. "Mr. Hayes, I assure you, I was acting in the best interest of the brand. People expect a certain standard at Elegantia. I was only doing my job." Isaac's patience was wearing thin, but he maintained his composure, determined to make his stance clear. "You've missed the entire purpose of Elegantia, Edward. Our brand isn't about turning people away or making assumptions about who deserves luxury. It's about creating an experience, a space where everyone feels valued. But your actions have done the opposite." Edward's face paled, realizing the gravity of Isaac's words. "Mr. Hayes, please. I can change. I'll implement better training. I'll personally oversee customer interactions. Just give me a chance, and I'll fix it." Isaac shook his head slowly, his expression resolute. "This isn't just about customer service training, Edward. This is a matter of values, of respect. Your behavior has shown that you don't understand the heart of this brand, and I can't trust you to represent Elegantia anymore." Edward's eyes widened, his voice dropping to a desperate plea. "You can't be serious, Mr. Hayes. I've been with this company for years. I've brought in record sales. I've done everything to make this store successful. Please, don't throw that away over a misunderstanding. Isaac's gaze didn't waver. This isn't about sales, Edward. This is about the integrity of my brand. What I saw yesterday was a pattern, a deeply ingrained mindset that doesn't align with Elegantia's values. Effective immediately, your franchise agreement is terminated. You are no longer associated with Elegantia. Edward's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing in stunned silence. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but the resolve in Isaac's expression left no room for negotiation. His shoulders slumped, and he let out a shaky breath. "Mr. Hayes, please. You're making a mistake," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I've given so much to this store. I can change, I can." Isaac held up a hand, stopping him. "My decision is final, Edward. I can't allow anyone to represent Elegantia who treats people with such disrespect. You'll receive instructions on the termination process, and security will escort you out." Edward sat motionless, disbelief etched across his face. Slowly, he rose from his chair, his gaze dropping to the polished floor. He managed a weak nod, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hayes. I'll see myself out." Isaac watched as Edward turned, his footsteps heavy as he walked toward the door. There was no satisfaction in watching him leave, only a quiet resolve. Isaac had done what was necessary, not just for the brand, but for every customer and employee who deserved a place free of judgment. As the door closed behind Edward, Isaac took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. He had taken the first step in restoring Elegantia's true purpose, but he knew there was more to be done. Turning his gaze to the city beyond the windows, Isaac resolved to ensure that Elegantia's legacy would reflect not just luxury, but respect, inclusivity, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserved to feel valued. With Edward's departure settled, Isaac felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that Elegantia's transformation would require strong, compassionate leadership within the store itself. The encounter with Edward had shown him the depths of bias lurking in his establishment, but it had also revealed something promising: the potential for change in others who held the right values. He thought of Sarah, the assistant manager, whom he had observed carefully during his visits. Unlike Edward, she had exhibited professionalism, empathy, and an unmistakable discomfort with Edward's discriminatory practices. Isaac had noticed her subtle resistance, her quiet hesitation when Edward issued his divisive orders. She might just be the kind of leader he needed. That afternoon, Isaac arranged a private meeting with Sarah in the same conference room where he'd confronted Edward. When she entered, her expression held a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Her posture was formal, but her eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty, as if unsure of the reason for this unexpected meeting with the owner. "Thank you for coming, Sarah," Isaac greeted, his tone warm and welcoming. "Of course, Mr. Hayes," she replied, her voice steady but reserved. "I'm here to help in any way I can." Isaac smiled, gesturing for her to sit. "I've noticed your work ethic, Sarah, and I wanted to speak to you personally about the future of the Kensington store. I know that the last few days have been challenging." Sarah looked down briefly, then nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, Mr. Hayes. The staff has been concerned, and I know that recent events have caused a lot of tension." Isaac leaned forward, his gaze sincere. "Sarah, I saw how you interacted with customers, how you handled yourself with integrity even under difficult circumstances. I need someone in that store who embodies the values Elegantia was founded upon: respect, inclusivity, and a commitment to treating every customer with dignity." He paused, watching her reaction. Sarah's expression shifted from cautious to something closer to awe, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Hayes," she said softly, I've always believed that every customer should feel welcome, no matter who they are. But I've also felt limited in what I could do under Mr. Graham's management." Isaac nodded, understanding the position she had been in. "That's exactly why I'd like you to step in as interim manager. I need someone I can trust to lead the team, to help create an environment where all customers and staff feel respected. I believe you're that person, Sarah." Sarah's eyes widened, surprise evident as she processed his words. Mr. Hayes, I don't know what to say. This is an incredible opportunity, and I'm deeply honored. But are you sure I'm the right person for the job? Isaac's voice was calm, reassuring. Sarah, I've watched you navigate some difficult moments with grace. You have the respect of your team, and you've already demonstrated the empathy that I want to define our stores. I have full confidence in your ability to lead. Sarah took a deep breath, visibly moved by his words. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I promise I'll do everything I can to uphold the values you've set for Elegantia. I know there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Isaac smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction at her resolve. Good. We'll work together to make sure the store reflects what Elegantia truly stands for. He leaned back, considering the first steps they'd need to take. Let's talk about a plan for customer service training. I want every staff member to understand that this store isn't just about selling luxury. It's about creating an inclusive experience for everyone who walks through our doors. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. I agree completely. We could start with workshops focused on cultural awareness and empathy in customer service. We'll need to ensure that every employee, from the sales associates to the support staff, understands the importance of treating each customer with respect. Isaac was impressed with her insight. That's exactly what I had in mind. We'll also provide training on handling difficult situations with professionalism and grace. I want each member of the team to feel empowered to offer an exceptional experience to every customer, regardless of their background. Sarah's expression grew thoughtful as she considered his words. It might also help to hold regular team meetings to reinforce our values, so the staff feels involved in this change. I believe they need to feel like they're part of something bigger, a shared vision for the store. Isaac's face lit up with approval. Excellent idea. I want this change to feel meaningful for everyone, and that starts with building a culture of respect from within. They continued discussing ideas for the training sessions, developing a detailed plan that would gradually transform the store's environment. Isaac suggested adding anonymous feedback forms to encourage employees to share their thoughts on how well the changes were being implemented. Sarah agreed, noting that a system for accountability would help foster a more respectful and cohesive team dynamic. By the end of their meeting, they had crafted a roadmap for reshaping the store's culture, one that went beyond surface-level changes to create a lasting impact. Isaac felt a sense of relief. He knew Sarah was exactly the person he needed to guide this transition. As they prepared to wrap up, Isaac extended his hand. Thank you for stepping up, Sarah. I'm confident that you're going to make a real difference. Sarah reached out, shaking his hand firmly, a new light of determination in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I won't let you down. I've always cared about this store, but now I feel like I finally have the opportunity to make it what it should be. Isaac smiled, sensing her genuine commitment. I believe in you, Sarah. This isn't just about changing one store. It's about setting a standard for all of Elegantia. And I know that, with your leadership, we're on the right path. As Sarah left the room, Isaac felt a renewed sense of optimism. This was more than a business decision. It was a commitment to a future where Elegantia would stand as a symbol of respect and inclusivity. He knew that with Sarah at the helm, the Kensington store would become the kind of place he had always envisioned, a place where luxury was not defined by exclusion, but by the warmth and dignity extended to every individual who walked through its doors. The following week, Isaac Hayes and Sarah held a staff meeting at the Kensington store, the first of its kind under Sarah's new leadership. The mood in the room was tense but filled with anticipation, with employees exchanging curious, hopeful glances. For many, this was the first time they'd had the opportunity to voice their thoughts directly with the store's leadership, and the presence of Isaac himself only heightened the sense of importance. Isaac began by addressing the room, his tone warm but direct. Thank you all for being here. I know there have been some significant changes recently, and I want to be transparent about the direction we're heading. My goal for Elegantia has always been to create a space where every customer feels valued, regardless of who they are or where they come from. But during my recent visits, I saw things that didn't align with that vision. The staff shifted in their seats, some nodding in agreement. Isaac's words seemed to resonate, especially for those who had noticed the previous atmosphere of exclusivity but hadn't felt empowered to speak up. Sarah stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. We're here today to talk about how we can create a better environment, not just for our customers, but for each of you as well. Moving forward, we'll be focusing on inclusivity, empathy, and respect as the core values of this store. We want every customer, no matter how they look or dress, to feel welcome and respected when they come to us. A few employees raised their hands, glancing at each other as if seeking confirmation to speak up. Isaac nodded to a young man named James, a sales associate who had been with the store for over a year. "Mr. Hayes, I think I speak for a lot of us when I say that we're excited about this change," James began, his voice sincere. "But what do we do if a customer comes in with, well, their own biases? I mean, we can't always control how people treat us either." Isaac listened thoughtfully, nodding. "That's a great question, James, and it's something I understand completely. Our goal is to create an atmosphere of respect, not only for customers, but for all of you as well. If you encounter a difficult or disrespectful customer, remember that you have the right to maintain your own dignity. Sarah and I will support you in handling those situations professionally. We'll be providing training in conflict resolution so that everyone here feels equipped to manage these situations with confidence." Sarah added, "And it's important to remember that you're not alone in this. If you ever feel uncomfortable or uncertain, you can come to me directly. We're building a culture of mutual respect, and that means supporting each other every step of the way." The reassurance seemed to resonate with the staff, but another hand went up, this time. A seasoned cashier named Lisa, who had been quietly observing. "Mr. Hayes, some of us are used to the old way of doing things here. How do we make this shift when some of the customers we've had expect a certain, exclusive experience? Won't they notice the change?" Isaac offered a kind smile. "Lisa, that's a valid concern. Change always brings a certain amount of uncertainty. Some longtime customers might indeed notice that we're adjusting our approach, but the heart of this brand is respect, not exclusion. My hope is that this change will actually make us more appealing. When everyone feels valued, it raises the entire experience. We're here to set a new standard of what luxury means, a luxury that welcomes everyone." A few nods went around the room, and Isaac noticed that the initial wariness was starting to ease. The employees looked to one another, finding comfort in the unified direction Sarah and Isaac were offering. James spoke up again, his tone now laced with a cautious optimism. "So, this means that if we see a customer being mistreated, even by another employee, we should feel empowered to step in?" Sarah nodded firmly. "Absolutely, James. Each of you plays an essential role in creating a welcoming environment. If you see something that doesn't align with our values, I encourage you to speak up. We'll be introducing a feedback system so that everyone can share their experiences anonymously if needed. This is your workplace too, and you deserve to feel proud of the culture we're building here." Isaac could see the shift happening, a quiet understanding settling over the room. The words were starting to take root, and with them, a sense of shared purpose was growing. For the first time in a long while, the staff seemed genuinely aligned, united by a commitment to a positive change that benefited both them and their customers. As the meeting continued, Sarah laid out the details of the new customer service training plan. Workshops on cultural awareness and empathy would be conducted regularly, with sessions on conflict resolution and techniques for handling challenging customer interactions. The aim was to give every staff member the tools to create a welcoming, respectful atmosphere in every corner of the store. Isaac then explained the broader vision, emphasizing that this transformation wasn't just about meeting sales goals or maintaining appearances. Elegantia is more than a brand. It's a place where people should feel seen and respected. This is just the beginning of what we can achieve together. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, and Isaac sensed a renewed sense of purpose in their expressions. The changes were ambitious, but they were also necessary, and with Sarah's guidance, he knew the staff had the support they needed. Before closing the meeting, Isaac opened the floor for any remaining questions, inviting everyone to share their thoughts freely. One by one, employees voiced their opinions, concerns, and hopes for the new direction. Each voice contributed to the collective understanding that Elegantia was embarking on a path that would reshape not only the store, but also the way each of them approached their roles. As the meeting drew to a close, Isaac thanked everyone for their commitment to this new beginning. "You're the heart of this store," he said, "and together, we're going to create something we can all be proud of." When the staff dispersed, there was a palpable sense of excitement mixed with resolve. Sarah lingered for a moment, turning to Isaac with a smile that held both gratitude and determination. "Thank you for trusting me with this, Mr. Hayes. I can already see how much it means to the team." Isaac returned her smile, feeling a surge of pride. "Thank you, Sarah. I couldn't have done this without you. This is just the beginning, but with your leadership, I know we're on the right track." As he left the store, Isaac felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The staff was ready, Sarah was prepared, and his vision for Elegantia was finally becoming a reality. This was more than just a staff transformation. It was the beginning of a culture of inclusivity, one that would resonate far beyond the walls of the Kensington store. It had been nearly a week since the new training initiatives and policies had been set in motion at the Kensington store, and Isaac Hayes decided to make an unannounced visit. He wanted to see the impact of the changes firsthand, without the formalities of scheduled inspections. As he approached the familiar storefront, he noticed a renewed energy, even from the outside. The window displays were thoughtfully arranged, and the employees inside seemed genuinely engaged with their customers. Upon entering, he was greeted with a warm smile from James, who was now handling the front section with an enthusiasm Isaac hadn't seen before. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes," James greeted him warmly, shaking his hand. "It's great to see you." Isaac returned the smile, nodding in approval. "Good afternoon, James. How are things going?" "Really well, actually," James replied, his tone sincere. "The new training sessions have made a big difference. Everyone's on the same page now, and it feels positive. I think the customers are noticing, too." Isaac's gaze swept across the store, noting the interactions between employees and patrons. Staff members approached each person with genuine attentiveness, offering assistance without any hint of judgment. He saw Sarah conversing with a customer near the handbags, her tone warm and inviting. Across the room, a younger employee was helping an elderly woman examine a watch, patiently explaining its details. Everything seemed to flow smoothly, the atmosphere friendly and inviting. Isaac felt a sense of pride. This was the Elegantia he had envisioned. But just as he was about to step further into the store, he noticed a familiar face by the entrance. Richard Graham, dressed in a somewhat less polished suit than usual, stood hesitantly by the door. His eyes were fixed on Isaac, his expression a blend of regret and nervous determination. Isaac's heart sank, knowing this encounter would be unavoidable. Richard stepped forward, his voice tentative. "Mr. Hayes." "Isaac, may I have a word?" Isaac maintained a neutral expression, nodding. "Of course, Richard. Let's speak over here." He gestured toward a quieter corner of the store, away from the customers and staff. As they moved to the side, Richard cleared his throat, visibly struggling to find the right words. "Mr. Hayes, I wanted to apologize for everything. I've had time to think about what you said, and I realize now that I was wrong. I let my assumptions get in the way, and I understand how that affected not just the customers, but the team as well." Isaac listened in silence, his gaze steady but unreadable. Richard's voice grew more desperate, his words spilling out in a rush. "I've worked hard to build that store's reputation. I thought I was protecting the brand, but I see now that I was just excluding people. I regret it, truly. If you'd give me another chance, I could prove that I can change." Isaac took a deep breath, his expression remaining calm. He had anticipated that Richard might return at some point, hoping to appeal for his position. But he had to consider more than just the words of remorse in front of him. What he'd witnessed with Richard had been a pattern, not an isolated incident, a deep-seated attitude that couldn't be easily reshaped. "Richard," Isaac began, his tone steady, "I appreciate your apology, and I'm glad you've had time to reflect on your actions. But what I saw wasn't just a mistake. It was a mindset, one that was affecting every interaction in the store. This isn't about one moment or one choice. It's about the values you demonstrated repeatedly, values that don't align with what Elegantia stands for." Richard's face fell, his eyes searching Isaac's for a glimmer of hope. "But people can change, Mr. Hayes. I can learn. I can be different. I know I didn't show it before, but I do respect what you're trying to create here." Isaac shook his head slowly, remaining firm but compassionate. "Richard, change doesn't happen overnight. And it's not just about saying you'll do better. It's about genuinely understanding why this behavior was wrong in the first place. You treated customers and employees as if they had to earn your respect, as if some were worthy and others were not. That isn't something I can ignore." Richard's shoulders slumped, the last of his confidence fading. He looked down, his voice now barely a whisper. "I understand, Mr. Hayes. I thought that after all these years, I'd at least have a chance to make things right." Isaac's gaze softened, but he didn't waver. "Richard, I want you to succeed in whatever comes next for you. And I genuinely hope that this experience helps you grow. But I need to prioritize the integrity of this brand and the people who come into our stores. This was a difficult decision, but I stand by it." Richard nodded slowly, a mixture of resignation and lingering regret in his expression. He looked around the store, taking in the warm atmosphere, the positive energy that had emerged in his absence. It was clear that he understood he had missed the mark and that the store was now thriving without his presence. "Thank you for hearing me out," Richard murmured, his voice heavy with the weight of finality. "And I truly am sorry, Mr. Hayes." Isaac inclined his head, offering a respectful nod. "I hope you find a path forward, Richard, and I do appreciate you taking responsibility." With a quiet nod, Richard turned and walked out of the store, his figure gradually fading from view. Isaac watched him go, feeling a complex mix of emotions. There was no satisfaction in seeing Richard leave, only the reaffirmed conviction that he had made the right choice for the brand and for the values he wanted Elegantia to embody. After a moment, Isaac rejoined the store, moving from section to section, observing the interactions that had become the norm. Staff members smiled genuinely, customers browsed without hesitation, and the space itself radiated a welcoming energy. Sarah caught his eye from across the room, giving him a small nod of understanding, as if sensing the weight of the encounter he'd just had. Isaac returned the nod, reassured by the positive changes that had taken hold. Elegantia was becoming the place he had always envisioned, a store where luxury wasn't just about exclusivity but about the dignity and respect extended to everyone. As he left the store that day, Isaac knew that Elegantia was on the right path, its foundation built on values that would guide its future. And in that moment, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had stood by his principles and created a legacy worth preserving. With Richard's departure, a new chapter for the Kensington store truly began. Sarah, now the acting manager, took on her role with a sense of purpose and compassion that quickly transformed the store's atmosphere. The staff, inspired by her leadership and the clarity of Isaac Hayes' vision, embraced the new direction with enthusiasm, working together to foster a warm, inclusive environment. Every corner of the store seemed to reflect the change, from the genuine smiles on employees' faces to the attentive way they greeted each customer. The effects were immediate and profound. Customers noticed the shift almost instantly, some commenting on how inviting the store felt, while others returned specifically because they sensed a new, welcoming energy. Sarah made sure to encourage her team to see beyond transactions, emphasizing that each interaction was an opportunity to make someone feel valued and respected. She organized weekly check-ins with the staff, where they shared their experiences, challenges, and small victories in adapting to the new approach. This regular feedback loop allowed everyone to feel involved, creating a strong sense of unity and shared purpose. Isaac visited the store frequently, always unannounced, to see how the changes were taking root. Each time he stepped through the doors, he felt a renewed sense of pride. The once tense and stifled atmosphere had transformed into one of openness and genuine engagement. Staff members greeted him with warm smiles, proud to show how they were embodying the Elegantia values in every customer interaction. Isaac would walk through the various sections, observing employees as they assisted customers without judgment or hesitation. One afternoon, he arrived to find Sarah holding a team meeting in the lounge area, with the staff seated in a circle, discussing recent customer feedback. Sarah encouraged everyone to share their insights, and even those who were usually quiet spoke openly about the positive responses they'd received. The team shared stories of moments where customers had expressed appreciation for the attention and care they were shown, often remarking that the Kensington store felt different, welcoming, even comforting. After the meeting, Sarah approached Isaac, her expression one of pride and excitement. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "I wanted you to know that we're seeing a lot of new customers lately. Word's spreading that this isn't just another luxury store. It's a place where people feel seen and respected." Isaac nodded, his smile reflecting his satisfaction. "That's wonderful to hear, Sarah. This is exactly what I'd hoped for. Thank you for leading the team so effectively. Your influence is visible in every aspect of the store." Sarah's cheeks flushed with pride. "I think we all feel the difference. The staff is motivated, and the customers are responding. It feels like we're part of something meaningful, and that's powerful." Isaac looked around the store, watching as James welcomed a young couple browsing the jewelry section, explaining the details of each piece with a patience and warmth that made them feel valued. Nearby, Lisa, the seasoned cashier, chatted with an older gentleman who was simply there to browse but was still treated with the same attentiveness as any paying customer. Isaac could see that his vision for Elegantia was becoming reality, a luxury brand defined by inclusivity, respect, and integrity. Throughout the following months, customer satisfaction continued to climb. Positive reviews appeared online, praising not just the quality of the products, but also the genuine hospitality of the staff. Many customers noted that the Kensington store felt unique, describing it as a place where they didn't feel intimidated or judged. Isaac knew this shift wasn't merely the result of superficial changes. It was a transformation rooted in the shared values that he and his team had established together. To celebrate the progress, Isaac arranged a small gathering for the staff, a gesture of gratitude for their hard work and dedication. The evening was filled with laughter, stories, and recognition for each team member's contributions to making the store a success. Isaac took a moment to address the group, expressing his appreciation for their commitment to creating a welcoming environment. "Thank you all for believing in this vision," he said, his voice carrying warmth and sincerity. "You've transformed this store into more than just a place to buy luxury goods. You've made it a place where people feel valued, and that's something truly special. I'm grateful to each of you for the role you've played in making this happen." The staff erupted into applause, and Isaac could see the pride in their faces. This wasn't just a job to them. It was a shared mission, a place where they could make a positive impact every day. Sarah, standing beside him, was beaming, her eyes shining with fulfillment. She had stepped into her role with a determination that had uplifted the entire team, guiding them through the transition with compassion and strength. After the celebration, Isaac made it a point to continue his regular visits, ensuring that the positive momentum was sustained. Each time he entered the store, he saw more evidence of the lasting change. Customers greeted him warmly, often stopping to tell him how much they appreciated the new atmosphere. Longtime patrons who had initially been wary of the change began to embrace it, commenting on how the new direction had enhanced their experience. As he walked through the store one afternoon, Isaac felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The vision he had fought for was finally taking root, and it was more rewarding than any sales report or quarterly profit margin. Elegantia had become a place where luxury was synonymous with respect, where every person who walked through the doors felt welcomed and valued. Isaac knew that this was only the beginning. The success of the Kensington store would serve as a model for the other Elegantia locations, a blueprint for the kind of culture he wanted to cultivate across the brand. And with Sarah and the Kensington team leading the way, he was confident that Elegantia would continue to grow, not just as a business, but as a place where luxury was defined by the way people were treated. As he left the store that day, Isaac felt a quiet satisfaction settle over him. He knew he had achieved something meaningful, something that would endure. Elegantia was more than a brand now. It was a testament to the power of respect, empathy, and the belief that everyone deserved to feel a sense of belonging. The new era had begun, and Isaac was ready to see just how far it would take them. The success of the Kensington store's transformation marked a turning point for Isaac Hayes and his vision for Elegantia. Inspired by the changes and the overwhelmingly positive response from both customers and staff, he knew it was time to expand this new ethos across all Elegantia locations. This wasn't merely a single-store policy shift. It was a comprehensive redefinition of the brand itself. Isaac began by meeting with the managers of each Elegantia store, holding a series of discussions that were both candid and inspiring. He shared the story of Kensington's transformation, emphasizing that the key to the store's renewed success lay not in luxury products alone, but in a culture rooted in respect, inclusivity, and genuine connection with customers. He outlined the new vision, explaining that Elegantia would now be known not just for high-end goods, but as a brand that championed dignity for all who walked through its doors. At first, some managers expressed reservations, unsure if such a shift would resonate with their customer bases. They raised questions about handling the expectations of longtime clients who had come to see Elegantia as a mark of exclusivity. Isaac listened to each concern thoughtfully, responding with the calm assurance of a leader who had seen the transformation's profound impact at Kensington. He reminded them that exclusivity need not mean exclusion, and that true luxury is an experience everyone can enjoy, no matter their background. He supported his managers by developing a training program modeled after the success at Kensington. This program would focus on empathy, cultural awareness, and conflict resolution, empowering employees to navigate challenging situations and interact with customers in a way that aligned with Elegantia's new values. Each store would also implement an anonymous feedback system, encouraging employees to report any concerns about customer treatment or internal practices that didn't align with the brand's inclusive ethos. The initiative rolled out across Elegantia's other locations, and the results were swift and encouraging. The shift in customer experience resonated far beyond Isaac's expectations. Store atmospheres began to echo Kensington's welcoming energy, and the positive feedback poured in. Customers who had once felt intimidated by Elegantia's luxury setting now spoke openly about how valued and comfortable they felt, while long-standing clients noted a new warmth and approachability that made their shopping experience even more enjoyable. As word of the transformation spread, Isaac's story began attracting attention in the luxury retail industry. Industry insiders took notice, intrigued by his approach to blending luxury with inclusivity. Soon, invitations for interviews and speaking engagements began to arrive. Journalists, curious about the man who had redefined exclusivity, wanted to know how he'd managed to create such a shift within a high-end brand. Isaac was invited to speak at an international retail conference, where he shared his journey with an attentive audience of business owners, managers, and industry leaders. Standing at the podium, he recounted the pivotal moments at Kensington, from his encounters with biased practices to the decision to implement a change that went beyond surface-level policies. He spoke about the importance of recognizing biases within the luxury industry and the responsibility of business leaders to cultivate spaces of respect and inclusivity. Luxury isn't just about exclusivity, Isaac told the audience, his voice steady with conviction. It's about crafting an experience that speaks to people's value, where they feel seen, respected, and welcome. True luxury means that every person who walks into our stores leaves feeling uplifted, regardless of who they are or what they look like. The audience responded with resounding applause, and Isaac could sense that his words had sparked something significant. After the talk, business owners approached him, some with gratitude, others with a renewed determination to examine their own practices. Several expressed admiration for his vision, acknowledging the courage it took to challenge the status quo in an industry often driven by tradition and appearance. Isaac's influence continued to ripple outward. Inspired by his talk, other luxury brands began reevaluating their customer policies, with a handful even consulting Isaac for advice on how to implement similar initiatives. His story became a case study, an example of how inclusivity could not only enrich a brand's culture, but also strengthen its appeal and profitability. Back at Elegantia, Isaac continued to make regular visits to each location, engaging with staff, listening to feedback, and celebrating successes. He took personal pride in the individual stories that emerged from each store. Employees who felt newly empowered to provide exceptional service, customers who returned because they felt valued, and managers who embraced the vision as their own, working to create an environment that made both the staff and patrons proud. One afternoon, Sarah joined him for coffee at a local cafe near the Kensington store. She shared updates about the team and discussed how the inclusive practices had fostered a sense of family among the staff. "It's amazing, Mr. Hayes," she said, smiling warmly. People aren't just working here anymore. They're part of something. They care about elegantia, and it shows. Isaac nodded, a deep sense of fulfillment evident in his eyes. That's exactly what I wanted, Sarah. I wanted elegantia to be more than just a business. I wanted it to be a place where everyone felt they belonged. And now, we're seeing the impact that approach can have, not just in our stores, but across the entire industry. The months that followed saw Elegantia's reputation soar, not just as a luxury brand but as a pioneer in redefining what luxury could mean. Competitors took notice, and other businesses within the retail space began incorporating aspects of Isaac's vision into their own customer service practices. His talks and interviews continued to reach a growing audience, his words inspiring countless entrepreneurs and managers to reflect on the values they wished to uphold within their companies. Isaac felt a profound sense of accomplishment. His journey had gone beyond transforming a single store or even a single brand. It had become a movement. Elegantia was now not only a name but a symbol of integrity, inclusivity, and respect, values that elevated the brand far beyond its origins. As he looked forward, Isaac knew there was still work to be done, but he was ready for it. The legacy he was building wasn't about profits or market share. It was about leaving behind a world where people felt respected, valued, and uplifted. And he was committed to ensuring that Elegantia would stand as a beacon of that legacy for years to come. This journey had proven to him, and hopefully to others, that change is always possible. True leadership, he had learned, was about fostering environments where everyone could belong. And in that, he found the greatest success of all.